So I'm 43 years old. Sound mind. Can you see my face? I can't really tell. Let me see if I can modify this a little bit to guarantee that you can. Sound mind, sound body. A lot of suggestions in life. When I say suggestions, I mean things that I know happen, but I have to be suggestive because I'm not sure of the reasons, the math behind it, the human behavioral concept, the principle. On my live feeds over the past, however long live feeds have been going on since, at least 2010 or so for me, 2007. Anyway, let me get to my point for today. Football season is coming to a close. Super Bowl's coming up. 4 teams played today. Sat with my mom, eating my vegan-adjusted, poultry-adjusted diet because of alpha-gal molecule limitations, allergies, which was odd to me because earlier on in my life, I suggested the capability. I suggested that if given a reason, whatever the reason, an allergy, I noticed that people have a tendency to take change better when they don't have a result, a fight, a concept. The visual displays and social displays that correlate to things that I've said, I'm not sure how to feel. The repeat news broadcasts, I'm not sure how to feel. The social secrecy, I understand, but I'm still not sure how to feel. My music, my creative works, my ideas, my human desperation being applied and effectively is such a humbling honor, but I don't know how to feel. My friends and family staying at a distant isolation. The truths that I speak being contradicted. And more so my words being thrown into the mix back at me. Now, I understand the psychological tactics. I understand the paradigm and layering methods of. This goes deeper than that, but I won't say much more on those topics. For stabilization, not protection, not classification, human stabilization. Clearly, there's corruption in the way our countries have been built, all of our countries, on the world that we live in. Clearly, there was disrupt in human trust, respect, terror, abuse, and clearly, networks of isolated supremacy, whether it be race, whether it be finance, whether it be status, whether it be lineage, are embedded in the things we trust and care about. Me being the human being that I am, suggested things over the years. And it seems like all of the things that I suggested have been effective in my offer of a solution. Because I was challenged by people in my personal life, well, if you could do it better, why don't you? And then I ran into the complications. And then I saw solutions. So I used human to human and peer to peer to try to network. Originally, as I've said a lot of times on my lives, I did it because I was going to break. I was going to be something I couldn't control myself becoming if I didn't prevent it. Attitude, self-detriment, nonchalant aspects of emotional content and social existence to where I wouldn't have cared about the consequences, if any, whether I was able to successfully outsmart life in our society or it was going to get me, I wouldn't have cared based on the way I was going. Dysfunction, personal methods of abuse from the dysfunction that patternized. When I say patternized, I mean I became acceptable to accepting them, and they became accepted in my pattern of daily life. Now, when they say in life, don't let people treat you a certain way because they'll get used to being able to treat you that way. All of these sayings that we deal with, do unto others, every saying you could ever interpret has been misinterpreted based on the supremacy leverage. Everybody wants to be the best. It's impossible. There's a status. There's just no way, if you scale a chart of competitive analysis, there is no the best, especially for everybody. And when it's corrupted and news can't be trusted and political agenda can't be trusted because everybody's covering something up and covering something up and covering something up, it becomes a hodgepodge of likely disaster. People hack to hack. When people started hacking things, it was for positive solution, for necessary change, to defeat corruption and data and personal containment structure. Then you have people that find themselves changing for the better of neutrality of human existence. Then they can't be trusted by anyone because they once were this way, now they can't be. My early relationship structure was abused by my family and network of people connected to because they wanted to interpret. So I went out of my way to over manage expressing these dysfunctions that were embedded in me through pattern, influence, adaptation, desire to gain the respect of people in those ranked positions in my life, the status members, my father, my mother, my older siblings, people in the neighborhood that had respect. Same as every child and every young adult now suffers trying to be like someone, whether it be their image, right down to their body shape and nipple size being replaced, penis enlargement, body modifications, not for the artistry, for comparative development. So as everybody's doing that and the world is shifting, I'm just horrified at the truth of what's going on. Now, I'm careful to say that because the truth of what I'm experiencing is in part trials of what I suggested. Now, I know it's effective, but I briefed earlier on in this statement to try to point out that there was things left out in my suggestions and requirements. Certain amounts of money set aside for me, certain amount of money given to me during certain scenarios, and it would have altered me having to tolerate the containment of while analysis, psychological evaluation was going on. Because psychology has been corrupted. Now, psychology is the study of the human mind. Now, when the human mind can ascertain fact, psychology was corrupted to contain conditioning, structural manipulations, false translations. All of these books of religion or group belief systems are based on supposedly the most accurate human capability if gods were able to give us the advice. So it was hypothetical. So through the decades and centuries of life, people have then manipulated interpretation. As they did my requirements, because then I wouldn't have had to tolerate the suppression which means I could have afforded high-priced internet. I could have afforded the freedom to be in different locations, to speak freely without fear of response within my personal life. If you say that again, you can't stay here anymore. You can't live here if you do this and do that. Well, those contingencies and emotional bias and emotional blackmail structures prevent millions of people every day from expressing the truth of themselves. And in that, the truth of what people can be and how they can develop. Now, you heard for years all these conspiracy theories. These news broadcasts, the things that I'm mentioning, the reference of the dog falling into the canal, the mention of the canal, the things that I'm experiencing in my personal environments is for real repeat ass shit. Not for anybody else to get normally upset about. No big deal. Maybe they had to run a loop. Maybe they just put that on because of this and they couldn't. Whatever the reasons, excuses, justifications, persuasive means of gaining acceptance that people apply. The truth is, it should be posted on the bottom of the screen. This is a repeat broadcast. I post some things and I don't mean to intentionally repost them, even my sketches. But you can see the difference in variables because I do everything live for that purpose. To contain outside influence and psychological manipulation from being able to gather too much control. Which is when I'm put in positions to be less likely to do that. So whether I'm stranded, whether I don't have a place to be, whether my family falsifies fear, threat, regard as the reasons and triggers for it, which has happened multitudes of times. Not only does that put people like me in false interpretation of self as well as social interpretation, but it also gives criminality a freedom. It gives false news a freedom. I don't know what these people are suggesting by the visual displays. I know that they're sneaky. I know that they're conniving. I know that it's manipulation based. I know that there's a likelihood that their connections to people, places, and things, they would love to be kept private. But that's where the classification structure and the government protection and guidance becomes a complication in our country, the United States. Because some people say, well, if the government can classify that data, is this still recording? Yeah, okay. Some people say, if the government can classify that data, why can't we do this secretly and not tell anybody? And it gets out of hand quick. Because in the early days, they were able to. In the hippie movements, they were able to generate enough mass appeal. But then trafficking, illegal narcotics culturing by Americans, American agencies, became a problem. Then the struggle for wealth, status, that position of the best. And again, I know for a fact there's some things that I have done and can do I am the best at. I'm the only one that does them within the realm that I do them within. Some people in my life would say you couldn't do that without us and without this and without the protection of and the what. Possibly true. But technique, criteria, creative development wise, I am luckily built into a structure that qualifies for one of the best in what I do. Now I hear mockery coming through in my head from a person that's supposed to be dead, that's not. Again, when you do something and engineer and initiate something that puts fear into people in large groupings, that if truth of humanity was stabilized, they couldn't get away with it anymore, you basically build a forged weld between these groups of people that are criminal activity developing people. More financially and materially cultured than human and naturally developed. My dad, for years, lived a fallacy of his personality in my personal relationship with him. For years, he went out of his way to lie and cover up he was doing the best he could while being narcissistically abusive, controlling, and dysfunctional within himself and in our personal relationship. Now, for me, it wasn't hard for people in my white collar, Mason driven prep school to see that. But everybody in my private Catholic school and my public school couldn't really notice it because they saw a bunch of similar things. It was tolerable. Well, look at the background, look at the it was accepted. So for me, when I talk about these things, I know that was repeat broadcasts. Possible repeat season, bro. I know this because I've dealt with the deception in my personal life and the fear of telling the truth because I was less than as the child. So I would then have to tolerate what would happen to me in my personal life if I told the truth, the same as in the social world. So when people position and apply to locations that I'm at, they want it to stress me so bad that I bring it up. Then they can deny it. And then it looks like I'm making it up. And when my family has an idea that this is going on, and they say I'm misinterpreting it, or what does it really mean? I don't care. It shouldn't be happening. So they try to draw me into an explanatory culture of the said such topics, which then is expansive, which leads me to know that it's analytically psychological. I know this exact moment is alive and well in my experience in life, somewhere in the timeline. And if you notice again, I've gotten better at being able to define the way I suggestively speak it, because literal communication has become the playground for manipulative structure of psychological culturing. So why all of it's going on, I'm not sure. But I am grateful that the people that are doing music of mine and making money that I want, you know what I mean, are doing it because I'm seeing that I know I suggested that for them. But it's not making the lie truth any easier. It's not making the who do you go to for help any easier. It's not making the trust and resources evaluate any easier. I don't want to be ego driven. I don't want to be confident that, yeah, I did it. I want it done. So when I mention social corruption going away, I don't want to be the voice of it and everybody praise me. I want it solved so people don't suffer. When I talk about homelessness, in experiencing it under a corrupt, structured manipulation, knowing that all of the people that experience it too have some variable of that applied to their life through the NAAA corrupt manipulation of help, because it is corrupt, to the religious interpretation and application into the field of psychology, which is corrupting it. Because they need real living help, not some fake floating existence to try to help them in their mind, the real flesh and blood mind that's struggling with the data that we receive in life around us. So in brief, I will mention, since 2001, hundreds of songs of mine, from my soul, my mind, my experience, and the connective energies of it, meaning soul, have been given to the world through other people's mouths, other people's studios, other people's engineers. It's still mine. There's a bigger value to it. There's a bigger image that I planned on creating and still will with that material in the lyrics, showing different places of my life and how, I call it corruption, but let's say influenced manipulation. You know, your parent wants you to go to bed because you're too young to realize that you need sleep schedule and blah, blah, blah. In my time frame as a child, it was hard for my mom to educate that because there was a lot of personal dysfunction given to her by life. But now that we've come into this generation of knowledge, it makes it easier for people to see the reasons, not the guilt or the blame, but the reasons behind things. So as I can see each scenario and I can show you how that applies to my lyrics or the feelings in the music or what my goal was, and then how I can show you that that got magnified into needing social help, psychology department, governing process, trying to get to the DA in 2 states that were arguing points whether to find me innocent or guilty on things when they didn't have any of the data they needed because they didn't require it and that it couldn't normally be trusted. So I broke all those barriers. I still don't know how because there were so many people helping while my life was kept dysfunctionally developing. Now, it started when it was in 2001, so 22 years ago, per se. It started earlier than that, but my initiation of what I wanted to see change started in 2001. So that's 22 years ago. Now I'm 43. I've earned millions to billions of dollars with the processes, but in not earning it directly or receiving it, I kept going and kept pushing. So as I saw the TV show, which some psychology guru in the world knows that I'm likely to say something, or somebody is. So they want to know how many people are going to notice it and say something. How many people care, or how many people are so self-involved. And I'm sure it ties to multiple parties of people. Everything's monitored. Every federal, state, and representation of is liable or contracts liability to be monitored at any point in time. So the valuation that's going on in our human social mind is brilliant. And that's all I'm going to say about it. Thousands to tens of thousands of examples, get at me. Truths, people you can contact that if they don't trust you might lie to you just to cover the whole process, but they have no problem telling you it was me, my music, my lyrics, my ideas, my concept, because it was never hurtful towards anybody. The point was, if we work together blindly without the criticisms and judgments within the creative art field, and it's not ego where you lie and steal material, and it's not ego where you manipulate and deface and defame, and everybody really collectively comes in on an idea, regardless of whose it was, which is why the anonymous me was necessary for the first 5 or 10, 15 years. Then you couldn't judge or critique except for the substantiated fact in it. That was me. That was me trying to take blame from my mom for the guilt I knew she felt. And my father for the guilt I knew he felt. Now he deserves more, but that's up to him and y'all. For life around me, I get it. People taunt. There's immaturity. There's competitive. There's bullying. There's misguided mindsets. It hurts. It's boring. I've earned a self beyond that. I don't want anything to do with it. And I knew that forcing myself to tolerate it would culture a stronger image and a stronger appeal for human beings. And hopefully, a method for us to lay out a mapping and guide truth to be able to be an ascertained neutral balance for all of us. Hopefully, this is the beginning of me breaking all of this down, period of time by period of time, album by album, influence by influence, manipulation by manipulation, and all of these networks of people that have involved since I've been back 5 years ago and in my life prior to that for the 6 years that they did it there. So that you can see and start to have a guideline of what trust is, what morality is now, and what we can be and deserve to be if educated correctly and guided towards it more appropriately. So yes, I get annoyed. Yes, I get frustrated. Yes, I use emotional expulsion, self-venting, self-talk tactics. And yes, sometimes they're horrific. But if you look at the world around us, it's way worse than what I did in my self-contained expulsion process. Yes, my attitude, my stress, but never my morality. Varied and fluctuates. Yes, I run my mouth about things sometimes privately that I wouldn't, because I'm affected, influenced by things. And the inaccuracies come from intention of criminal mindsets covering their own ass. They don't care about the truth because they know they're covering the truth. They are hiding it. So when I see people display what my life was like when they forced me to be homeless in Tennessee, as I'm where I'm at now, that's psychological torment. A warfare strategy of damage point psychology. They're criminally manipulating the data and surrounding factors with psychological intention. But there's no call to be made in our society about that, which has to come to point too. Just like a kid pinching another kid in a classroom in school, the teachers don't punish them for that. They just try to get them to stop doing it so class can continue, so life can continue. This has been 22 years of certain groupings of people working honorably, salute, behind the scenes. But also 22 years of snide, manipulative, morally degraded people from sabotaging, covering their ass, and trying to instill fear from distant ways. Because they know that what I'm trying to accomplish brings all of the walls of illusion down that they criminally hide behind. And trust me, even the good people that had to do some things over their life to come through on the end of making it and paying for things and so on and so forth have benefited from these truths coming out. Because if you're not smart enough by now to see that the future is more important than the present, for the youth having an opportunity not to experience what we have and have heard had experienced in our lifetimes prior to us, then you should go seek psychological damage point help right now. Because it is corrupt. It is broken. It is damaged. I personally know that this whole town has in some way, shape, or form or another moved differently. Some good, some bad. I don't know who did what or who said what. I don't know any of the real depth of it because I never involved in it. Because I didn't trust it. Which ties into the 6 years of psychological influence from the military signature to now. That being said, there's been some broadcasts on the news that are repeats, which then makes you wonder how many. I've tried to record these things on my live feeds. Now I have to try to record them and see if I can get them posted in time. Because my live feeds were disjuncted, broken, cut off. I complained about it. Instagram, I used to be able to save them and then reload them. Next thing you know, I'm loading them on YouTube and the save reload is gone. I can't even save them anymore. Do I think grand wise in my head that it had something to do with me? Not personally, individually, but as a whole, overall, fuck yeah. I don't go around checking people's phones and see if they can download the stuff or not. I don't know if they tied into Periscope and Facebook because it's the same owners at that point in time or the same group of people that know each other. And I reached out to everybody at one point in time or another in those ranked positions in ways that I knew they would hear my voice. A risk? Yeah. Worth it? Hell yeah. Fuck yeah. And fuck all of them that don't want change for the betterment of all of us and the nature that we're destroying. It's okay to be truthful and honest. It's okay to be humble and moral. But it's also okay to fuck shit up when you need to. But you need to know when to need to. That's why I self-isolate. So I don't make a mistake, because somebody causes it. And our society hasn't come to grips with that psychological necessity yet, to where I have to take blame, like I have several times in my personal life, because of things my family members were doing that were immoral. And then when I responded, I had to be accountable for my own actions. But yet, if someone bombs our country, we can blow the entire fucking country they live in off the map. And it's okay. But as individuals, we have no real right to psychologically, morally, emotionally, situationally, or in the encompassment of the entire social aspect, society-wise, fight back. For balance, self-respect, and trust. Peace, always love, one happiness, one world, one human.